He was, in his own words, a lover of freedom. The love of freedom would put him on an inevitable collision course with the apartheid state. He was destined to be an activist lawyer and a champion of the liberation struggle. We read in his memoirs how it astounded him that he, a refugee from Europe, had more rights in South Africa than the black majority, born and bred in South Africa. He could not and would not accept how he, a white immigrant, could be well-fed, clothed, educated, while the native people of the country lived in squalor and deprivation. This George would not accept. His activism really began when he was a student at the University of the Witwatersrand in the late 40s. It was at university that, as we have heard, he first met Nelson Mandela, and he would later go on to defend him and others in both the 1956 treason trial and the 1963 Rivonia trial. This was the start of a lifelong friendship, which he describes so well in his book, 65 Years of Friendship. President Mandela would later write that George was like a brother to him, and that he was greatly comforted that during his long imprisonment, his family was being looked after by his friend. The apartheid government punished him quite severely by denying him citizenship for over 3 decades. And there he was, living stateless in a country that he had adopted. George's biography relates that the refusal letter told him he was not fit and proper to become a South African citizen. But the rebel rouser that George Bizos was, he would not go quietly. He never laid claim to having been a firebrand or a revolutionary. He sought neither honors nor recognition, and he was not given to talking about himself. He did not desire fame, nor did he seek it. Even when apartheid ended, he never brandished his past to cover himself in glory and to loudly proclaim to the world where he was, what he did during the fight for liberation. George Bizos never did that. He never did that because he was there. He was always there. At every crucial point in our country's history and along our path to liberation, George was there. Quietly, but also loudly. Unassumingly, but also forcefully. Being on the defense team at the Rivonia trial was a baptism of fire for George. He was still a young lawyer, but he made his mark with his legal prowess, and let it be said, with his street smart as well. It is recorded that he forewarned the trialists that the government was planning to hand down the death penalty on all of them. As the story goes, and as it is well known, he proposed that Madiba, who had written the speech that we all know now, that Madiba should add words if needs be. into the statement from the dock, averting that would for all intents and purposes be an premeditated miscarriage of justice. Over the course of his life, George defended many leaders of the struggle like Trevor Huddleston, as we had, Govan Mbeki, Walter Sisulu, and many others. But they were not just his clients. They trusted him and also became his friends. But there was also the George Bizos, away from the glare of the television cameras of the world. As our journey to democracy beckoned, Madiba asked him and Arthur Chaskelson to be part of the ANC's Legal and Constitutional Committee, working alongside a number of other ANC leaders. George and Arthur politely but pointedly asked whether they were required to join the ANC. Madiba said, "That is definitely not a requirement." It was not so much of a relief from Arthur and George, but they had expected that Madiba would not require that they would join the ANC. The committee fashioned the constitutional principles that are today the foundation stones of our Constitution. And then there was George Bizos, who led the team for the Constitutional Assembly to certify the first constitution of democratic South Africa, and who also assisted its drafting. George Bizos brought a unique quality of personality and intellect to bear on his knowledge of the law and the constitution of our country. His contribution has simply been quite extraordinary. And his influence on our constitutional democracy is without any doubt felt not only by those in the legal profession, but by many South Africans. He was on the right side of history. When the democratic government fell short of its obligations, or when big business abused its power, he and his colleagues acted on behalf of the vulnerable. For him, the struggle did not end with democracy, but would only end when every man, every woman, and every child in our country enjoys the rights promised to them in the Constitution. We do owe it to his legacy to finish the business that George started. George was indeed a son of the soil, not born of it, but he was the soil itself. He will forever be remembered, and we will remember him in his robes, rising to address the court and smiling, leaning on his cane as he whispered to his clients and his protégés. From where he stood, in his own unique way, he did move the earth. He was a patriot, he was a hero, and he became a citizen of South Africa, and a proud one for that matter. He was the embodiment of a fit and proper South African citizen. It was an honor and a privilege to have known the man who lies here. George, your friend of 65 years, Madiba, is waiting to welcome you. Your other good friend, Arthur Chaskelson, is waiting to discuss the legal cases that you both got involved in, and some of those that you argued before him as Chief Justice. I say, fare thee well, good friend. I thank you.